Welcome to a night in the world. And now this week, I've been looking forward to Davos. Now Davos, God knows how you say it. It's a small town in the Alps of Switzerland, up near the Austrian border. And every year it hosts the World Economic Forum. It's basically a big circle jerk of the world's elites getting together and congratulating each other on being masters of the universe. Now, I don't usually follow it too closely every year, but this year has taken special interest because of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's return to Davos and the kind of train wreck that we're all kind of expecting. And, well, look, let's be honest, he didn't disappoint. I was lying in bed the other night waiting for it to come on. It comes on about 12:30, 1 o'clock Australian time here, or Central Australian time here in South Australia. And I'm lying there sort of half asleep, listening to him ramble on for about an hour and a half almost. And I'm just lying there in bed with my eyes closed and I'm thinking to myself, God, this is really bad. Like, this is one of the worst speeches he's ever delivered. In fact, it's one of the worst speeches anyone's delivered in a long, long time. I had things like, they're not the smartest race, Ethiopia. That came probably 20 minutes in. And I thought, yep. This was 20 minutes after his usual ramblings, his usual propaganda about how good he's been, how good he's made America again, how much I won by, the landslide that I won by, and all this kind of nonsense that he goes on. He starts making things up like there's hundreds and hundreds of steel plants being built in the US right now, when in fact the reality is there's one. All this kind of nonsense about how the economy's booming and all the polls are wrong and all the prices are coming down and coming down fast, and all this kind of nonsense that he started the speech out with. And then, of course, he turns to the Ethiopia stuff, because this has, of course, got to do with what's going on in Minnesota. There's been some scams run with childcare centres run by Ethiopians, and they've decided that that's justification for this ICE action at the moment. They can send in armed thugs to try and round people up, Hitler brown shirt style. And, of course, it resulted in the shooting of Renee Good, a woman who was sitting in her car. Sure, she was blocking a path there, but she wasn't trying to run anyone over. Let's be clear about that. And she got shot in the head 3 times and was killed. So that's obviously causing a lot of unrest over there right now. Trump soon turned to China and about the windmills. He's got this real thing for windmills. This is the wind turbine, the electricity creating wind turbines. He said they're very smart, China. They sell all the turbines to everybody else, all the idiots who buy them, but they've got no wind farms themselves. Well, they've got 2 of the biggest wind farms on the planet. And apparently, he says that he's been looking, but he can't find any wind farms in China. I don't know. Is that what he does? Is that his body double playing golf when he's got his time off? He's actually really in China, driving across the country trying to find wind farms. He makes these things up as he goes. And again, someone's writing this speech for him. Of course, he's got to approve what's being said, but someone's writing these speeches. I'm not entirely sure who's doing it. I don't know whether that's publicly known who's writing his speeches. Maybe it is. Maybe I'll look into that. But, God knows in the future what's going to come of these people, like where they're going to end up and who's going to want to talk to them. And what the inside stories that are going to be coming out of this Trump White House is, it's going to be pretty wild. He quickly turned to NATO. He started saying things like, I don't think they'll be there for us. We'll be there for them. And then he furthered that in a couple of days later. When he was talking to the Fox News stooge, Maria Bartiromo, who's basically a big ass kisser of Trump, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the NATO commitment's got everyone up in arms, and quite rightly. Greenland was the big thing that everyone was looking forward to hearing about, and it didn't take him too long to start talking about that. Maybe half an hour in, he started talking about Greenland, saying the usual stuff that he's been saying. Well, for most of his presidency, certainly since his return, but it's really been ramped up in the last couple of weeks. We need Greenland. We need it. It's for security reasons. He wants to build a golden dome and all this kind of stuff. And, the minerals are definitely a part of it because a lot of his mates are involved in this mineral stuff and they want to get their hands on the stuff. But the reality is this. The United States of America had full access to Greenland the whole time. They used to have about 17 military bases there, but they reduced that to 1 for some reason or another. They certainly haven't been kicked out. They can have all those military bases back if they want. They can have all the licenses for the mining, if they want, as well. So this has pretty much come down to Trump being kind of a real estate guy. He likes grabbing things from people. He likes bullying his way into getting what he wants. There's been a lot of talk about this, the Mercator map. So if you look at a flat map of the world, Greenland looks really huge. It looks massive. It looks bigger than Australia up there, to the northeastern side of Canada, heading up towards the North Pole. But the reality is the actual size of it's really more like Western Australia. It's a little smaller than Western Australia, the state of Australia. And that's because of the Mercator map, because everything gets spread out at the poles on a flat map. But so it's not representative of the true size of countries, especially those that are, Antarctica, you can see across the bottom, that sort of runs across the bottom of the whole map, and the top of Canada and Russia. They look a lot bigger than they actually are. And people have been saying that someone has showed Trump one of these maps, and he's like, oh, gee, that looks big. I like the look of that. And so, if America were to take over Greenland, in the future, that Mercator map would have Greenland and it'd be an American flag on it. And it would make the size of the US look way bigger. And there'd be the continental United States, there'd be Alaska, there'd be Greenland, and there'd be Canada in the middle. And that wouldn't look good for Canada, would it? I mean, they sort of feel themselves surrounded in some ways, but I don't think that I can't see any kind of takeover of Canada. That seems a bit far-fetched to me. But, so he goes on to say that, we want Greenland, we want this piece of ice. And then he started to refer to Greenland as Iceland. He did it on 3 or 4 different occasions. Now, look, you could probably look at that and forgive him for saying that, because he's referring to Greenland as a piece of ice, and it's all ice. And then he's referring back to Greenland after saying something else and calling it Iceland. So you can see where there could be a slip of the tongue there. But many people are saying maybe it's a Freudian slip, or perhaps it wasn't a Freudian slip, rather it was actually purposely said, in that he's thinking that he'll get Greenland and then he'll take Iceland as well, and it's part of the whole plan. But look, I don't know, people are kind of probably looking too much into that one. But nevertheless, Caroline Levitt, his press secretary, who's a professional propagandist, has denied that he even called Greenland Iceland at all. And she was asked about it, and she just said, no, it didn't happen. So again, this is the kind of Orwellian type stuff that we're dealing with right now. It was like with the ICE shooting of that Renee Good. Everyone saw the video for themselves, and then Trump comes out and Vance comes out and says, oh, no, she tried to run over the police officer or the ICE agent, and we're watching it, and she didn't. And they said she did. So this is the kind of, 1984, the government tells you not to believe your own ears and eyes, and then you believe them. So we're heading into a pretty dangerous kind of territory with this. It's getting a little dodgy. But back to Greenland. Trump then slips into his speech that, he's saying that people are worried that he's going to use force. He's not going to use force, he says. He says he's going to not use force to take Greenland. Not that he probably could anyway. But he's ruling out force now, but he's going to stick with the tariffs. This is what he's saying in the speech. After the speech finishes, he says he's walking back on the tariffs as well, because there's framework for a possible deal in place. And we don't know what that framework is. This is about 3 days later now. And it's looking more and more likely that Trump has actually chickened out and backed down, because he started getting jittery when the bond market started looking a little squirrely. And this is what happens. This is what happened last time when he started putting those huge tariffs on every country in the world just about last year when he took office again. The Japanese in particular were the ones that started dumping their bonds. They've got over $1 trillion in US Treasury bonds. As soon as they started doing that, the market started to wobble. And the prices, everything started to tumble a bit. And Trump shits himself every time that happens. And so he quickly wound back those tariffs on Japan from a fairly large percentage back to something a lot smaller. And I don't even know what it is right now, because this stuff's changing all the time. But if you want to get Trump to do something, hit him in the hip pocket. And this is what happened. Treasury bonds started being sold by Europeans, and the market started to wobble a little bit, and Trump got spooked, and now he's walked back on it all. So this guy is nothing but bluster. He's a lame duck president, and he's going to get even lamer after these midterms happen. If these midterms happen. And that's going to be another question, because if things get bad enough, and it looks like his power is going to be wiped, like he's going to lose control of the House, probably won't lose control of the Senate, because only a third of those votes are up for grabs. Only a third of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years, like a 6-year cycle. So they're probably going to hold on to the Senate, but the House, they're going to lose power to fund anything they want to do. So watch this space in terms of what happens there, because I think things are going to get very, very interesting in the next 6 months on that front. So now, who's responsible for Trump backing down, like I said, the bond markets. But Mark Rutte, the former Dutch Prime Minister, who's now the Secretary General of NATO, he's a bit of a Trump suck-up. I mean, last year he called him Daddy Trump. Trump mentioned that in the speech. They called me Daddy. And Mark Rutte, he's, I'm not sure about him. He's a bit like Jan Stoltenberg, the guy who he replaced. Like, these characters, I'm not sure what they're all about, but whether to take them seriously, whether to trust them. Anyway, apparently Mark, they're calling him the Trump Whisperer now because he's able to sort of, walk that fence, tread that line of sort of saying things to Trump that he may not like, but also flattering him at the same time. And there was an interview after the Davos speech where he's talking to Trump about what we're going to talk about next, and that is Trump's comments to Maria Bartiromo about NATO troops not coming to the aid of the United States of America. Trump's basically said, well, I don't think they'll come to our aid. We'll definitely come to theirs, but they won't come to ours. And, they say things like, they sent some troops to Afghanistan, but, they held back from the front line. And that's really outraged pretty much everyone who had troops in Afghanistan with the Americans, especially those from NATO who came to their aid after September 11. When Article 5 was invoked, they all put their hands up straight away and said, we're with you. The Poms, the English, are really furious. They lost 457 troops in Afghanistan. And you got this US president, the president of the United States of America, saying, they didn't really do anything. They're held back from the front line. We lost 40-something troops here in Australia. We're not part of NATO, but we're just part of the coalition of the willing. So everyone's really outraged about that. There are a few people who haven't said anything yet. Nigel Farage is one of them. That toad, the leader of UK Reform Party. Starmer, he made a couple of statements, but we need to see something stronger from him. And the thing is, you probably won't get an apology from Trump because he just doesn't apologise. It's not what he does. It's part of his shtick. Never apologise, double down on everything, triple down on everything. And he learnt that from Roy Cohen, his slimy lawyer that he used to have back in the 80s and 90s. So, I mean, that's been controversy. But this whole speech was something that, when I was lying in bed listening to it, I was like, oh God, that's another one. There's something else. There's another thing. And it's usually packed full of so much outrageous garbage that you think, and people are going to, and the first thing off the press was him saying that he wasn't going to use force for Greenland. And we kind of knew that was what it was going to be. But the rest of the stuff, it's just absolutely... and there's more stuff that I've got written down here as well, but I'm just picking stuff up that I've kind of noticed, and I've listened to the whole speech. Another notable speech from the Davos conference was Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, I kind of rate this guy. He's a pretty good speaker. He's a pretty smart fella. He was the chairman of the Bank of England, and he was also, I think, the chairman of the World Bank at some point in time. Anyway, he's a fairly established figure in the economic circles around the world, and he basically made a speech saying, look, we're taking the sign down from the window in that all these countries around the world who supposedly adhere to the world order, the post-Second World War order, which was led by the Americans, everyone's kind of had a sign in the window saying, yep, we're on board, we're playing the game. And he's basically come out and said, look, this is just a whole protection racket led by the Americans. We're taking our sign down out of the window. We don't want to play the game anymore. They started doing some deals with China. And he's basically announced to the world that the current world order, or the world order that's been in place for the last 80 years, is no longer operational. And I think he's right. But one thing I have to say about that is that he's kind of saying, yes, we're out. We're not going to subscribe to this nonsense by the Americans anymore because basically we're not benefiting from it. So we're going to go elsewhere where we can sort of benefit from it. And does that mean that we will just sign up to another racket somewhere? Are we going to see a system that's going to work better and more fairly towards other countries in the world that aren't so prosperous? I doubt that very much. Nevertheless, it's good to see one country at least breaking away from the Americans, at least one country that was sort of firmly entrenched in that old world order. And Australia is another one of them. Australia is one of them, and I don't think we've heard anything yet from the Prime Minister. We're in a precarious position, a geographical position. We always have been. What do? We can't cut ties completely. We've got military entanglements with the United States of America, but I think we can certainly sign up back into the old Commonwealth type system where the old band gets back together with the UK and Canada, New Zealand, but this time, maybe the French are involved and other European countries to try and band together and create a bit more of a stable alliance while the Americans are actually rogue for a while. And look, again, this may not end when Trump is gone. It probably won't, because the world will be like, well, okay, Trump's gone, and let's say that some Democrat comes in and says we're going to restore trust and order back into the way the world works and back into the way the United States holds itself. The world might say, yeah, okay, that's all well and good, but what happens if the next election cycle some other crank comes back in like Trump and just turns everything upside down again? The world's going to be very, very hesitant to want to sign up with the Americans for a considerable period of time. Something else that has come out of Davos is Trump's Board of Peace. Now, look, he's invited a lot of ghouls onto this board. Vladimir Putin and Lukashenko from Belarus being two, and a few other clowns like Sisi from Egypt. Yeah, there's a number of them at the moment. I think I saw about 20 of them on the stage the other night when Trump did his big unveiling of the Board of Peace. It's yet to be seen whether Putin has accepted, but he's certainly been invited. Netanyahu's on there, of course. I mean, look, and Putin and Netanyahu wouldn't have been there anyway, because there's international arrest warrants out on those clowns for crimes against humanity. So they'll be arrested if they leave their own countries and go to a country who actually adheres to the International Court of Justice. But it's almost as like Trump is trying to lead a separate body, separate to the UN, and basically get as many ghouls as he possibly can on board, because it just kind of pisses everyone else off. I mean, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Kim Jong-un was invited. I don't know about the Chinese. They run their own kind of thing, and I think they're probably out. But he's inviting all these clowns, and it's $1 billion to join as well. $1 billion. What's Trump doing with that money? We already saw the money that he's taken from Venezuela already go into a Qatari bank account. God knows what he's doing with this stuff. Like, he's in control of it. This guy's the most immoral president that's ever been in office. We had Jimmy Carter selling his peanut farm because he wanted to avoid a conflict of interest when he became president. Think about that for a second. We're dealing with a mad king here. Things aren't looking good. How does this end? Like, he's looking more and more unstable and more jittery. I mean, that Davos speech, of all the absurdities that were uttered, it was really low energy. Like, it was really low. Like, he just was there, like, the whole time. And it's just like, he looks tired. He looks like he's worn out. He's got these big bruises on the back of his hands. They're obviously from some sort of IV or something like that they're giving him. So he could be gone at any time, and I think that would be for the best, to be honest with you. What else came out of Davos? Elon Musk was there, of course, the clown, and he made a joke about the Board of Peace being the board of a piece of Greenland. God, what a freak he is. And again, just in the last day, last night, apparently there's an armada, according to Trump, on his way home from Switzerland on Air Force One. Trump has declared that there's an armada of US force heading to the Middle East. Now, this has obviously got something to do with Iran. Now that he's failed on Greenland, is he going to turn his attention to Iran again and try some sort of military action? Who knows? But apparently there's an aircraft carrier on the way. I think it's the USS Alabama. A heap of other ships on its way to the Middle East. So expect some sort of bombing campaign on Iran. This is the other thing. Like, when I say that, is he going to turn his attention to Iran now? I mean, I think it's likely he's also going to turn his attention somewhere in the Americas again, because he wants to turn his attention somewhere where he can't be told what he can and can't do. Are they going to try some sort of shenanigans on Cuba next? Are they going to try and bomb somewhere in Mexico? Like, what are they going to do? Because this Greenland thing has been a total humiliation. They're trying to run it as if, we're going to get access to some bases in Greenland. Yeah, you had that access the whole time, Donald. And that's another thing, too, that he made up during the Davos speech. He made up that the Americans had control of Greenland during the Second World War, and they gave it back to Denmark at the end. They just make things up. Again, this is Orwellian. You change the past. You make up history to change people's minds on what you want to do right now. They did that, and they've been humiliated. They've been humiliated by Europe. They've been told no. You can say yes, and we'll be very appreciative. Or you can say no, and we will remember. I mean, like, what's that? What is he, some sort of mafia boss? And that's the way he kind of runs the world right now. Anyway, he's been told to stick it by the Europeans, so what's he going to do now? He's going to want to try and turn somewhere else where he can't be told what to do by anyone. And so, we saw that with Venezuela, a bit of a circus that. But what will he do next? What will Donald Trump do next? Anyway, that's the inaugural A Night in the World with DW. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Good evening.